If you're sitting there in 2026 trying to figure out which programming language to learn, I have to tell you, you're asking the wrong question, and not for the reason you think. In this video, I want to break down the right way to learn coding in 2026. What's actually changed, what's still the same, and what do you need to focus on if you want to be a serious builder this year. I'm going to explain all of this to you in the most comprehensive and easy to follow way I can. Here's exactly what we're going to be covering. 1. Why the which language should I learn question is basically dead and what to learn instead. Secondly, what vibe coding actually means because most people are getting this completely wrong. And third, a real software development lifecycle that you can follow when you're using AI to build AI tools, which is a very inception kind of moment, and I'll explain it. The teams shipping production AI right now, whether they are big firms or solo founders building real businesses, even with one engineer and a Cursor subscription, are not the ones who have memorized Python documents. They are the ones who understand what they are building. So by the end of this video, you'll understand how to learn coding better than 95% of the people posting roadmaps on internet today. And I'm sure there's going to be a lot of words that I say which might at first sound alien, but stick with me, we'll go through everything. If you're new to my channel, welcome here. I'm Aishwarya Srinivasan. I also go by Ash. I've spent over 10 years in machine learning and AI. I have a master's degree in data science from Columbia University, and I've been a data scientist at companies like Microsoft, Google, and IBM. In the last few years, I've been an AI developer relations leader, and I'm currently co-founding the Gen Academy, which is an AI skill building platform. Now, for the last 15 years, every beginner pretty much asks the same question. Should I learn Python? Should I learn R? Should I learn JavaScript? And honestly, that question used to matter. Each of these languages had its own syntax, its own architecture, its own hierarchy. And moving from one to another was basically learning a whole new spoken language. You had to retrain your fingers, you had to retrain your brains, you have to retrain how you thought about variables and classes and memory. But today, that is not the bottleneck anymore. If you've been working with Python code and you need to get into Go, that's just a single prompt to Claude or Cursor or whatever tool that you're using. The code translation problem is solved. So the question is no longer what language should I learn? It is rather what should I actually understand? Now with that said, you still need to pick a starting point, and I'm going to recommend Python. Why Python? Because almost everything in the AI ecosystem speaks Python first. The biggest libraries, the most tutorials, and the most active community, and the most job listings for AI roles. So if you learn Python well, you have access to almost every AI tool being built today. That is why I'm going to recommend to use Python and anchor this video onto that. And this is where most people go wrong. The worst possible way to learn Python is to open a Python documentation and start memorizing the built-in functions. Trust me on this is very 2010 and you will get bored in 30 minutes and quit it right there. Let me show you how you should do this instead. The first thing you actually want to understand is data structures, because every line of code that you're ever going to write is moving data from one place to another, from one format to another. So if you understand the shapes that data can take, you understand 60% of any program that you'll ever read. In Python, the 4 shapes that you need to know are lists, dictionaries, tuples, and sets. Let me explain these without the textbook voice. A list is simply a row of lockers. Each locker has a number. You can put anything inside and you can swap things in and out whenever you want. A dictionary is like a phone book. Every entry has a name, which is the key, and a number, which is the value, and you can look things up by name, not position. A tuple is like a sealed envelope. You can put stuff in once, but you can't change what's inside, which is useful when you want to make sure nothing accidentally gets edited. And a set is like a guest list to a party. There's no duplicates allowed. And the order doesn't really matter. That's the simplest explanation. And if you want to go deep into data structures for Python, I'm going to link that resource below. Now, the next thing to understand is how Python code actually runs. This is the part nobody explains to beginners, so they just end up being confused about why their code does what it does. Python is what we call is an interpreted language, which means it reads your code line by line, top to bottom, and executes each line as it goes. Think of it like reading a recipe out loud and doing every step as you read it. You crack the eggs at line 3, you whisk them at line 4, you pour them in a pan at line 5. If the line 3 fails, line 4 and 5 can never happen. That's why error messages always tell you which line broke. That's also why the order of your code matters so much. Now here is where I want you to spend some real time. Every real Python application has a few standard building blocks, and once you know them, every code base on GitHub starts to look familiar. When you clone a project, you usually see a folder with few different files. There's a readme.markdown, which is a welcome sign of the front door. It tells you what the project does, how to install it, and how to run it. Then there is a requirement.txt file, which is basically all the external libraries that the projects need and you need to install. If you want to run the project, you need to install everything on that list. Then there's usually a app.py or a main.py, which is the main function for any application. This is the file that you actually run to start everything. And then there are other Python functions, which we call as modules, each one handling something specifically. Now let's talk about libraries. A library is just a code that somebody else has built and you can borrow. Things like pandas for working with data, fast API for building APIs, LangChain for building agents, requests for making HTTP calls, etc. All of these are code that somebody else has built, which is basically your library card. And every library has a version, because library that you used last year might have changed its function this year. That's why you pin versions in requirements.txt so that the next person who runs your code gets exactly the same library that you used. Your future self at 2 a.m. debugging a production issue will thank you for pinning versions. I promise you. And finally, modularity, which is just a fancy word of saying don't pull everything in one line. Really large files of code can be hard to read, hard to understand, and hard to debug if something goes wrong. So you want to break them into chunks so they're easy to understand. And if you want to really change something in a specific module, you're not really touching anything outside of it. A good analogy is think of your code base like a house. You don't sleep in the kitchen and you don't cook in the bathroom. Each room has a purpose. In your code, your data loading logic goes in one file, your API routes in another, your AI model calls in another, your utility functions in another. Each module does one thing and your main app just orchestrates them. The moment you start writing real applications, modularity is what keeps you sane. It's also what makes your code base legible to AI tools as well. Because when Cursor or Claude Code or Codex reads a well modularized project, it can actually help you. When everything is in one 2000 line file, even AI can get confused. Okay, now if you've made it this far, you're already taking this more seriously than most people. Now let's jump on to the next section. I'm sure you've heard of the term vibe coding by now. Andre Karpathy coined it, and the moment he said, the entire internet decided it meant coding without thinking or coding casually. That was never what Andre meant. What he actually was saying is that the barrier to entry has dropped through the floor. You no longer need a 4-year computer science degree to build real software. You can build with the help of AI tools and you can ship things that actually work even if you don't have a formal coding background. That's the real meaning. Lower barrier to entry is not equal to lower standard of quality. The word vibe makes people think that it's casual. It is not casual. If you're vibe coding without understanding data structures, without understanding modularity, without understanding what a library is and why versioning matters, you're building a house on sand. It will work for a week and then something will break. And you'll have no idea why. And your AI tool will not be able to fix it either because it has no context about what you're actually building. Vibe coding is for people who understand the principles, who skip the rote syntax memorization because AI handles that part for them, and who can move fast because they know what they are asking for. That's the actual story. Now let me show you the workflow that goes with it. Here's the funny part. We are now using AI to build tools that themselves use AI. It's very Inception kind of moment and I love it. It's like dream within the dream, except the dream is your code base. So the software development lifecycle has shifted and I want to give you a real playbook that you can follow. Step 1, define the problem in writing. Before you open Cursor or before you write a single line of code, write a paragraph that explains what you're building, who is it for, and how you'll know it works. This might sound obvious, but I see people open up an AI tool and just start prompting before even having a defined problem. They end up rewriting the whole thing in 2 weeks. Then step 2 is design the architecture before you build. You can even ask your AI assistant to help you do this. Once you have a defined problem, you can ask the AI assistant to help you figure out the best architecture or even recommend 2 or 3 different architectures and explain those architectures to you. You need to have that sketched out. Is there a front end? Is there a back end? Is there going to be a database? Which AI model are you going to be calling? What tools or API does it need to access? And that's what I'm saying. You can literally have Claude or ChatGPT design this entire thing for you. And based on its explanation of what it's doing with each of the architecture, you can make an informed decision of what architecture do you want to build. So, step 2 is basically saying that don't just go from a problem statement directly to code, have a system architecture in between. Now, step 3, set up your environment. Create a project folder, set up virtual environments so that your dependencies don't conflict with other projects. Having a clean hygiene with your code base is very important. You can start with initializing a Git repository, write a README file, create a requirements.txt. This part is plumbing, but doing it once at the start saves you hours later. Now, step 4, build the smallest version first. Get the tiniest possible thing that works end to end. I love calling this as a cupcake to a wedding cake methodology. Instead of building a wedding cake layer by layer, where each layer is not really a complete solution, you go from a mini cupcake and start sizing up your cake to make it look like a wedding cake. So at any given point in time, you actually have a complete solution. If you're building an agent that summarizes documents, get one document in and one summary out before you build the upload interface or the database or the multi-document feature. Simple. Vertical slices, not horizontal layers. Now, step 5 is iterate with AI as your pair programmer, but read every line. Don't just blindly accept AI generated code. Read it, ask it questions, ask it to explain anything that you don't understand. That's where the real learning happens. Even if you're somebody who is a non-developer and comes from a non-computer science background, this activity of going back and forth with your AI coding tool to have it explain the code to you will really help you wrap your head around what's going on. And trust me on this, no developer is going to ever tell you this. Coding is not rocket science. And that's why AI solved it first. Now, step 6, test it. Even informal testing. Run it on real inputs and try to break it. Try the edge cases. If you ship without testing something, you will find these bugs in production, which is the most expensive place to find them. Now, step 7, ship it somewhere. Even if it's on Hugging Face Spaces or a Streamlit app or just a working demo that you can show to a friend. Shipping is what closes the loop, and the act of shipping teaches you more than just the act of building. Now, step 8 is what turns a side project into something real. Get on the flywheel. Once you've shipped that smallest version, you should not stop. You use it, you watch where it breaks, you notice what's missing, and you make one small improvement. Then ship it again. Then do it again. Each cycle is one tiny step on its own. It might take an hour, it might take an afternoon, but here's what nobody tells you about flywheels. The first few pushes are the hardest because nothing is moving yet. But by the 10th cycle, you're moving faster than you thought was possible because the foundation is solid and every change is building on the last one. The biggest mistake I see people making is treating their first ship as the finish line. It is the opposite. The first ship is the moment the flywheel starts turning. So next round, don't try to build the perfect feature. Build the smallest improvement, ship it, learn from it, and do it again. That's how real builders ship real software. Well, that's your life cycle. Define, design, set up, build, iterate, test, ship, and do it again. Every project, every time. Now, I can only make this video so long, but I want to teach you so many more things. So what I've done is actually linked some more resources below. So I would highly recommend that you go check them out. All of them are free resources. And one more resource I want to flag is we ran a lightning lesson at the Gen Academy with Sandhya Simhan, who's the head of growth product marketing at Glean. Sandhya comes from a non-technical background and now she's constantly building real applications and AI tools. In that session, she walked through her exact life cycle for vibe coding, the right way as a non-engineer. If that's where you're at right now, the recording is genuinely going to be worth your time. I'll add that as well in the description below. Now, if you walk away from this video remembering one thing, let it be this. Learning to code in 2026 is not about memorizing syntax. It's about understanding the shape of how software is built. So you can use AI to build at a speed that used to be impossible. Thank you so much for staying with me for so long. Just one last thing is that we are running a Mastering Agentic AI certification at the Gen Academy. It's a 6-week long certification cohort, both for technical builders and non-coders like product managers, product marketing managers, GTM folks, and we're partnering with companies like NVIDIA, Nebius, Pinecone, Levin Labs, LangChain, Llama Index, and so many more companies. You'll be getting free credits and we'll also be bringing in AI experts from their company to come and talk about certain topics. Most companies cover this certification under their L&D budget, And for my YouTube audience, there's going to be a special discount, of course, which is also going to be in the description below. If you found this video helpful, please do subscribe and hit that bell icon. You can also share it with your colleagues and friends. I post about AI and machine learning, free resources, career tips, and educational explainer videos every week. Plus, I also share my journey building a career in AI as an immigrant in the US. If you have any questions, you know what to do, just drop that comment below and I'll check it out. Now stop watching this video and go build something.